Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Labour's electoral stranglehold is over. This is a seismic victory. We have torn the roof of British politics. And that's because people now recognise there is an alternative. Hannah Spencer and the team just ran the most incredible campaign, crystal clear about what Hannah stands for and what the Green Party stands for. To lower people's bills, to protect the National Health Service, and to rebuild our public services. This was the 127th target seat for the Green Party. Why is that relevant? It means there is no longer any no-go areas for the Green Party. Right across England and Wales, at local council, at Senedd, and in Parliament, we will be working hard to get Greens elected, and the starting gun has fired on local elections in 70 days' time. From Wales in the Senedd, Anthony Slaughter and Tessa Marshall, to Zoe Garber in Hackney, right across, there are names, new Hannah Spencers that aren't literally Hannah Spencers, but people who got involved in politics because they care, because they're from their local community, and they're ready to make a difference. The final thing I want to say is this. This is an existential crisis for the Labour Party. No longer can they try and scare people into saying they have to vote for something because they're worried about the least worst option. A vote for the Greens is a vote both to stop reform, to stop Labour, and for something hopeful and a plan. Talking about hopeful and a plan, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome the woman to the stage who took on the billionaire donors and won. The MP, I'm going to have to get used to that, the MP for Gorton and Denton, Hannah Spencer.
Thank you so much. Really enjoy it.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to read from this, and I probably may get a bit teary, and I'm actually not going to apologise for that. First of all, I definitely need to say some thank yous to the local Green parties who put their trust in me to be their candidate in this by-election, to the campaign team, to the local Green Party members, to the thousands of volunteers who travelled here to help us get our message out. Some from up the road, some from the other side of the country, and most of all, to the people of Gorton and Denton, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm so honoured that you've chosen me as your Green Party MP to represent you in Parliament, and I promise I will work so hard to deliver for you. I can't wait to get started and work to influence policy that makes lives better for people like us, to bring down the cost of living, introduce rent controls, and get the litter and fly tipping off our streets. I couldn't be more proud to represent Gorton and Denton, and by that, I mean the whole of Gorton and Denton. I'm so proud that we fought a really positive campaign against the Reform Party that dances to the tune of their billionaire donors who don't want to pay their fair share of tax, and against the Labour Party, who also stooped so incredibly low. We want an alternative to the stale, broken, old two-party politics, and that is the Green Party. I don't want to dwell on it for too long, but I have been appalled at some of the divisive, dog-whistling campaigning from other parties. I know in my heart, and everyone knows here, everybody here belongs. Everybody deserves to have their needs met. Everyone deserves a voice in our democracy. And today, the people here in this constituency have sent a very clear message. We've rejected hate and embraced the politics of hope. Not blind hope, hope that is rooted in an ambitious but very achievable plan to transform our country for the better. And throughout this campaign, it's been clear that the majority of people in Gorton and Denton share similar concerns about the spiralling cost of bills and housing, about crumbling public services that have suffered years of underfunding, and about threats to our National Health Service, which must be protected and restored and must not be carved up and sold to the highest bidder. And yes, many voters I spoke with from lots of different backgrounds are deeply troubled by this Labour government's complicity in genocide. And I am so proud that the Green Party stands firmly against genocide and war crimes and defends human rights in Gaza and across the world. And I am so proud to represent a constituency filled with people who care about the suffering of those thousands of miles away, just as we care for our friends and neighbours here at home. Because that is what we do here. We look after each other. And the mission here of the Green Party is to rebuild our country based on values that I see with my own eyes practised day in, day out, here in Gorton and Denton and across Greater Manchester. And let me tell you, this is only the beginning. Because as we've heard, this was number 127 on the list of Green Party target seats. There are at least 126 seats where we can win with a smaller swing than we saw here. But actually, we can win anywhere. And I was elected because people in this constituency want change. We are sick of being told that there's no alternative, that we should shut up and accept it as our household costs spiral and our wages fail to keep pace. That things which used to be possible, things that were normal not that long ago, free higher education, reliable and affordable buses, beaches you can safely swim at, being able to get a dentist appointment when you need one, we're told that now that is too much to ask. But the people here of Gorton and Denton know that it's not good enough, and today we've demanded more. It's the same story up and down the country. And this by-election has shown that there is no longer any such thing as a safe seat. And there is no part of the country where the Green Party cannot win. Something absolutely massive is happening right now. And I invite you to be part of our movement. Come and join the Green Party so that we can spread hope and we can win everywhere else across the country too. Because this is just the beginning. The Green Party is on track to make big gains in the May elections, in the Senate and in councils all over the country, and our momentum will continue building. You've seen a green surge. Well, now wait, because a green tidal wave is coming at the next general election. And as our wonderful leader, Zack Polanski, is very fond of saying, we are not here to be disappointed by Labour. We are here to replace them. And I was here to replace Labour in Gorton and Denton, and that's job done. Tomorrow, the real work begins. Thank you so, so much.
That was great.
We're now going to have a question and answer session. We've got a roving light to come around for people. I think we've been better. Manchester United.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bethan. I think we do what we've done, certainly over the last few weeks, but what we've been doing for a really long time, which is listening to people, and that's going out on the doorsteps, as we've done thousands of times in the last few weeks, and that I've done for a number of years when I've been in politics, because that's how we find out what people are worried and concerned about. And I want to make sure that we shift what politicians look like and how accessible we are. I know a lot of people I know have such a low trust in politicians, and we've seen that again. So many people have told us that over the last few weeks. And I know that being present and listening to people and inviting people to come to me and to us, but also going out into the communities that are underrepresented and do feel let down, is the way that we can restore and rebuild trust.
Thank you. And next we have BBC Northwest, Annabelle Tiffin. Thanks, Georgia. We put people on opposite sides of the room just to test you.
Thank you. Hannah, you said you led a positive campaign. So what do you say to accusations that you played sectarian politics in order to win over part of the vote here?
I think we've done what we always do. We unite people on the shared common ground and the beliefs that we all have together. I'm really proud here that our communities, our backgrounds may be different sometimes, but actually we are genuinely united over that common feeling of struggling and struggling together and sticking up for each other. And I think that really resonated with people. I know that whether you're someone who is really in the thick of it now and struggling, or whether you're someone who's kind of got to a bit of a better place in life, that's how we've united people. We've refused to be divided, and instead we've focused on our shared common ground and our shared beliefs and our shared desire to move to a better place where we're not divided by politicians who are just intent on turning us against each other.
And next we've got Granada, Lisa McNally. Maybe we don't. No, I'll keep going. Al Jazeera, Sonia. Here we go. That's okay.
My name is Hale, I work in New Organization. So the Green Party was among the few parties in Parliament to support what's going on in Palestine. Do you think that this election was somehow affected by what's going on in Palestine?
Thank you. I think I do talk about this quite a lot, about that shared struggle and recognising when something is wrong and whether that's something that's happening to us or happening in a different part of the world. We recognise that it's an injustice and we unite by speaking up and speaking out against it. And of course, we talk to a lot of people about what is happening in Gaza and Palestine and about how the Labour government have been complicit in that genocide. But I think that is something that we feel very strongly about across many different backgrounds here, because we have a really proud history of sticking up for each other and doing the right thing and speaking out against injustice.
And next we've got Harry from BBC National.
Thank you, Mr. Polanski. Harry Farley from BBC News. This was a success at a particular stage of the Parliament, in a particular part of the country. How far do you really think the Green Party can go with your support for legalising all drugs and your support for linking NATO?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, as we've said a couple of times, this was the 127th target seat. So in terms of extrapolating that across lots of seats, I guess the lesson we've learned from this is when we have an amazing candidate, a brilliant campaign, and a motivated volunteer team. We had 2,000 people on the ground yesterday, or close to 2,000 people, which is pretty extraordinary. In terms of the policy platforms that we stand on, I would say the Labour Party did their best to make sure that everyone knows what our policies are, and for that I should probably thank them. And we got a 4,000 majority in what was supposedly a Labour stronghold. And so I think people are absolutely ready to have sensible conversations about policy. And some of the way that the Labour government has conducted themselves in this contest, I talk particularly about drugs, a really serious issue. We have the highest death rate from drugs in the whole of Europe. And Keir Starmer, rather than taking a public health approach or looking at harm reduction, thought it sensible to make cheap political attacks, to send vans around the constituency. Now, that's all water under the bridge because Hannah's sat here as the MP, but I do hope this Labour government will reflect on how they've conducted themselves during this campaign, how they've taken some really serious issues, trivialised them and made them into cheap political points, whereas actually I think the public are in a lot more mature and nuanced place than sometimes politicians who have maybe been around for too long and have become cynical don't have the courage to lead. The Green Party will always lead. And next I've got Beth Rigby from Sky News.
Yeah, sure. Just switch over batteries and one on. Yeah,
it's been a huge victory for the Greens today. You've contested 87 by-elections. You've never won over 10% in any of them until today, when you've absolutely mullered your opposition. Reform, who are also chasing Labour hard and are ahead of all of you in the polls, have said that their aim is to replace the Conservative Party. Hannah, you talked about replacing Labour. Zack, do you think that you will eviscerate, annihilate Labour, and you actually want to overtake them so they're irrelevant, just as Farage wants to do on the right with reform?
I think it's beginning already. I think it happened last night where we took one of their strongest seats. I think when you look at membership numbers, we're so close to that 200,000. That, by the way, 200,000 is Green Party membership for England and Wales. It doesn't include Scotland. If you included Scottish Greens, we've already overtaken the UK Labour Party. I should note, we don't know the UK Labour's membership numbers, and I'd be really interested if there's any journalists in the room, if people would ask Labour MPs if they know their membership numbers. More seriously to the point, though, I think people are crying out for change, and they're crying out for an alternative. And on a whole host of issues, people are so annoyed with the Labour Party. And one of the answers I've heard Hannah give yesterday, which I thought was interesting, was, would this have been the same scenario if Andy Burnham had been the candidate? And I think both of our views changed over time. I'll be completely honest, when Andy Burnham wasn't selected, I punched the air and I thought, it's very probable we can win this. I wasn't complacent, but I knew we could do it. Having seen the anger out on the streets about the Labour Party, Andy Burnham is still a Labour politician. And I would say no matter how popular you are, no matter even if you have some of the right positions, I think people in this country are looking at Labour MPs or high-profile Labour politicians and saying, where are your red lines? How can you stand by what this government is doing, whether we're talking about the cost of living crisis, whether we're talking about the genocide in Gaza, or generally a real feeling that they were voted in on one word, change, and they've not offered a whole lot of it. The Green Party are here, and we're ready to give them that change.
May I just ask a cheeky but
Sure, go on.
just ask a follow-up question, because you are now onto the national stage, you've won a by-election, you have real momentum, but to become a genuine party with the prospect of government, you have to scale up big time, and it means you do have to win mainstream votes as well. As you campaigned, kind of particularly in your speech, you only mentioned the environment once, you talked a lot about inequality and referendum politics and ordinary people feeling screwed by richer, wealthy people in this country. That was your acceptance speech. But you talk, Zack, about legalising all drugs. You talk about withdrawing from NATO. Labour would argue you are not a serious party of government, and actually when it comes to, the push comes to shove, Middle England will not vote for you. What do you say to that?
Well, Labour brought in a man who was friends with one of the most notorious paedophiles in the world and was leaking secrets, state secrets. So I'd question Labour's idea of what serious governance is. On the environment, you talked about, Hannah spoke a lot about inequality. Well, it's this inequality that's destroying our environment. It's multimillionaires and billionaires who are polluting our environment, polluting our democracy, and polluting our communities. So actually, you can't be an environmentalist without recognising all the things that Hannah was talking about and the Green Party regularly talk about, which is we need to rebalance power and wealth in this country. For far too long, multimillionaires and billionaires have taken our wealth, they've taken our democracy, and they've taken our communities. Well, last night, we started to take them back. And finally, just before I hand to Hannah, I would say, yes, we want to appeal to all sorts of people, and we want to appeal to as many people as possible. We believe we can do that while still being true to our beliefs and remaining with our core values. And the reason for that is because neither of us are here having taken any money from private healthcare companies, from oil and gas companies, from arms trade companies, or gambling companies. We know Labour politicians and Reform politicians can't all do that. And that means when they speak, they have to think about who has paid them or who has donated to their party and whose vested interests do they represent. We're up here representing two vested interests. That's for people of Gorton and Denton for Hannah, and it's for Planet.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. And then we've got Claire Fallon from Channel 4 News. I'll keep moving on. Sophie Huskerson from the Mirror.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry to jump in. I think it's Harry Hale from Mighty News.
okay.
Zack, to you first. What do you think this result means for British politics? Do you think that your party has been ignored a bit by the parties in Westminster? This is the moment that the Green Party is taken more seriously. And then to Hannah, you will now represent many constituents who didn't vote for you. And when you give this constituency, who will feel that you ran a campaign that stoked division in this area? What do you say to those?
I think this election will transform the face of British politics. And why do I think that? Well, let's look at what the alternatives could have been today. People could have been sat here today with another Labour MP. The government would have taken that as things aren't going great, but actually, you know what, when push comes to shove, people still vote for us and will just carry on meddling through. We could have had a Reform MP. And I believe that the Labour government would have responded to that by saying, yeah, you know what we need to do? We need more anti-migrant rhetoric. We don't need to worry about the cost of living crisis. We can just keep fighting on culture wars. And what happened last night is, despite the fact that the other parties threw the kitchen sink at us, we had Hannah the plumber. And she's, sorry, terrible one. And ultimately, Hannah has demonstrated the complete opposite of that. You can be absolutely true to your values, and you must be true to values. You can talk about social justice, economic justice, and indeed environmental justice. At the heart of it, lowering people's bills and tackling the cost of living crisis. I think a party that can do that at the same time as talking about international affairs, at the same time as talking about the climate crisis, and do it with the wit, the humour and the kindness that Hannah's done, I think that's a party everyone should be taking really seriously.
Thank you for the question. I think broadly we did the exact opposite of dividing people. In fact, we united everybody with our shared values and common ground, and we did that by doing what I and so many normal people do. When we find someone who we maybe disagree with on some things, we have honest, adult conversations about that, and we work to find a solution and to listen to each other and understand why we've come to that point of view. But we find that common ground, and that is what everyday, normal people do all the time, and that is what is missing from politics, and that is what people saw here. People saw that we were willing to work together. I have sat and had conversations with many different people from many different backgrounds, many different faiths, many different levels of education, whatever it was. People who, on the surface, other politicians will tell me that I'm very different from, but actually, deep down, we have so much in common, and I know that we will change politics by having people like us who are used to having those honest conversations with each other and fixing problems, which is what so many of us do in our day jobs. That is how we will change politics, and we haven't divided anybody. We have clearly brought a lot of people together, but we've brought a lot of people back together.
Thank you. And I just want to add to that, because I think it really needs saying. No one needs to agree with everything that the Green Party put forward. In fact, one of my favourite phrases, if you agree with us on 7 out of 10 things, then vote for us, join the party. If you agree with us on 10 out of 10 things, that's a bit weird, like find something to disagree with. And actually, I think the national conversation we really need to have in this country is we don't need to agree on everything all the time. If people's fundamental values are about dignity and humanity and looking after people, then those are the values of the Green Party. How we get there is another conversation, but let's start by uniting in the values, and I think Hannah's an exemplar of exactly that. Megan Kenyon from the New Statesman. Oh, sorry, have I missed you, Sophie? I'll come back to you. Okay, Sophie, sorry. Sophie Huskinson from the Mirror. Seamless.
So Hannah, the first question for you, please. Lots of people this morning saying Andy Burnham and Burnham that they which is one of this. Do you think that the decision to block Andy Burnham helped your campaign? And then a question for you, Zack. So when you were elected as leader, I remember you saying to me that you hope to win at least 30 seats at the next general election. After last night, has that target changed? If so, what is it? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, as Zack said, and as we've both been saying quite a lot throughout this, my feelings about what would have happened if Andy Burnham stood have changed throughout the conversations that we've had with so many people, and that if he'd have stood, I think we would have harder fight, but I think we possibly still would have won it. And I think we've heard from so many people that they are so angry with Labour and have been for a really long time, that him standing as a Labour politician would not have helped in his campaign to be elected here and would really have gone against him. And so I think that conversation my thoughts on it have shifted as time has gone on, and I think even standing him would not have been the saving grace that they thought he would have been.
Thank you, Sophie. When I became leader of the Green Party, if I start with membership numbers and I'll come on to MPs, I remember we had an internal conversation that we were coming up to 60,000 members, and we said, should we put out a press release to say we're hoping for 100,000 by the end of the year? And I confess it was me that said, let's aim for that internally, but maybe let's not shout about it. You know, let's get running first. We were at 100,000 in just a couple of months, and now we're about to hit 200,000. So on the MPs, when I said 30 MPs, that felt pretty ambitious. I'm sat here thinking now, though, that does sound unambitious. Now, so I'm being really clear, we currently have 5 MPs, and getting to 30 would be a very impressive achievement in one election. But the scale of the crises facing us, from the climate crisis to the inequality crisis to the nature crisis, we know we need to scale up a lot faster. And what just happened last night and over the last 5 weeks is we've demonstrated we have the resource to do that. When we motivate people with hope and a plan, they will come out, they will volunteer, and that's how we get people elected. Now, you notice there's not a number at the end of this question. I'm dying to give you a number. But that's because in 70 days we have the local elections. I want to see us win loads more councillors right across England and Wales, but particularly in the Senedd as well, to win those Senedd members. I think once we've had that set of local elections, it's time to go back to the first board and say, okay, what does this set of MPs look like? But I will say 30 looks unambitious. I was talking about 50, by the way, in the last month. But again, I'm looking back at that again and going, actually, where is the ceiling on our ambition? Because we do not have time to waste around. There's lots of reasons why people need a Green MP, and we're ready to be as ambitious as the country is. Megan Kenyon from The New Statesman.
Hi, Felicity. Obviously, in the past few months back, we've seen a few people, not necessarily MPs, but who were formerly part of the Labour Party, so for example, Mishwar and James joining the Green Party. Nigel Farage has set a deadline to certain MPs or any other MPs defecting to reform. Are you expecting any MP defections from Labour or any other party to the Green Party, and do you plan to set a deadline like Farage has done?
Thank you. I guess, do we expect Farage to stick to his deadlines? That would be my first question. But anyway, that's a side note. It actually comes back a little bit again to when I was elected as leader of the Green Party. During that campaign, I spent a lot of time, just personally with my team, talking about how do we get defections. And the reason for defections would have been to improve polling numbers, to increase membership, to increase fundraising, and then maybe eventually win a by-election and get a Green MP. Well, we've done it anyway, and what an MP we've got. So this isn't a no to defections, but actually it's just not my priority right now. My priority right now actually is scoping out where might a likely by-election be about to happen, and how do we make sure we're on the ground as quickly as possible to make sure we can repeat this as many times as we need to. Also, that relentless focus on local elections and the Senedd. So not putting a deadline on any defections, and any MP who shares our values, I'm always open to those conversations. But quite frankly, it's just not something I'm craving at this point, because actually I want to win Green MPs, and I want to do it on the ground the same way that we just did it last night, because I think that's how we grow much quicker as a party now. And Dean Haggith from The Independent.
Spoken about how this election shows a new lens rise in British politics with result of left and reform rise. Questions for both of you really. How would you differ from the Labour Party in taking on the challenge of reform? Lots of different reasons told you Scott, but you need to be brave. Would you be brave, and how would you respond to reform differently to the Labour?
Do you want to go first, or
I think it's more than being braver. I think it's about having some actual principles and a coherent narrative about what you do. Because right now, Nigel Farage says jump, and Keir Starmer says how high. There's so many issues where we've seen Keir Starmer not actually present an alternative to Nigel Farage. He's just presented Diet Coke Light. And, if people wanted the full fat version, then they would vote for Nigel Farage and for reform. Now, it's not for me to give Keir Starmer tips, and I think even if I gave him tips, he probably wouldn't be around long enough to implement them anyway at this point. But in terms of the Green Party, I think it's about not giving an inch to the right, because we see the more that you give and the more that you feed it, the worse that they get and the further and more extreme it gets. And actually the thing I think we need to do in the Green Party and the left more widely is to tell the stories based in facts and information that get people emotional. The fact that if you have a migrant worker in this country, they're so much more likely to pay money into tax than they are to take out in benefits. How much our National Health Service relies on migrant work. Of course, we should be training up British workers as well, but also recognising we have skills gaps in our economy, and it makes no sense to be blocking. And I think it's these kind of conversations, which I totally accept, are tricky conversations for some areas of the country, but I don't think you avoid those tricky conversations by aping the arguments of your opponents. I think you show leadership, and you win the argument over time by genuinely listening to people and connecting to them.
Thank you. And to sort of comment on the point about left and right, terms that we often find ourselves using quite a lot, but I know a lot of people like me who haven't been political for very long don't always think of us in those terms. We think about what we have in common, and I think we can really see that the people that Reform were trying to pitch to, and certainly here, assumed that they had in the bag entire communities that they thought they had just automatically won the votes of. That hasn't been the case at all. We've shown that we might be told that we're different to each other, opposite, maybe because we believe slightly different things, but actually we really deep down care about a lot of the same things. And so I think the idea possibly of left and right is changing a little bit, and I think we've shown here that we have united a lot of people that Reform certainly thought that they could take their votes for granted, and we've shown that all of our communities often do really care about the same things. Either we've had similar struggles or different struggles, but we understand each other. I've said quite a lot, we have very high levels of empathy here, and I think that's really shone through how much we care about each other. And so the idea that we might be completely opposite to each other because we disagree on slightly different things, I think has turned on its head, and I think we've found what we've got in common. We've got together, we've organised, we've fought back against a system that shuts so many of us out, and we are changing that. And I really, really meant it when I said that one of the first things I will do as an MP is automatically change the idea of what an MP looks like, and the next people who are going to be MPs are people who are watching what's happened today, and they're thinking, actually, maybe I do have the skills to be able to contribute to politics, maybe I do and should have a seat at the table. And I know you talked about the skills shortage, Zack, and I'm really sorry to say that there is going to be a worse skills shortage of plumbers right now, because we're already short, and that's one less of us in Greater Manchester, so yeah, sorry about that.
Whilst we go and source some plumbers, thank you all very, very much for being at the press conference. We've got work to do. There's a hell of a job out there, but we're incredibly excited to get started, and we'll see you all soon on the campaign trail. And Hannah, we'll see you in Parliament. Thank you very much.